that running. Okay, it's running fine. All right. Now, I want you to be sure you just don't feel that whatever you say is not unimportant. Okay.
I'll assume most of it is to start with, and after that I won't say anything.
Okay. But you have been living in West Newton since 1927. Right. And you've been living in this house since you've been married?
Yeah. That's our legal address since 39.
Yeah. Well, what kind of changes have you gone through with the house, like improvements and things like that?
Not too much in the house. The house was built in the 80s, 1887 or something. And we haven't really, we've redone the kitchen right after the war, and we've done numerous paintings and just painted most of the house just now. Put on stone windows this year, but nothing major. We haven't done much to the house, just keep it up. It's beginning to show a little bit of the wear. It settles in parts, and the doors don't quite fit tight or something. But that's to be expected. But it's a great house to bring up kids in anyway, so we love it. We will stay here.
What about the general surrounding neighborhood? Have you noticed any major changes in the neighborhood?
They have been very definitely. If you take, are you familiar with West Newton at all?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. Well, the first street on the right down here is Berkeley Street.
Yeah.
And from Berkeley to Commonwealth and over to the next street, which is Exeter or something, was one estate. It was owned by the family of Sinclair Weeks, who was a big shot in United Car, and he had two maiden aunts who lived in a real old ark here, all during until after the war. And it had 1 million square feet. And Weeks was pretty powerful politically, I guess, because he got the whole thing classified as pastoral. He had one cow. So instead of paying residential tax rate, he paid the pastures, equivalent of farmland, which is a little different. And although I guess they had a lot of money, his general factotum used to come around and try and sell milk to around here, I suppose just to justify the fact that it was farmland or whatever. So that was one thing, and the only exception was that where the Pierce School is, just below, about where the site was, there was a house that was carved out of the intersection, owned by a family named Fitzgerald that had 14 kids. He was an inventor, and that did not belong to the Sinclair Weeks family, which is called the Dowse estate. Dowse being one of the family names of the Weeks. So that was the only one I know of, and the rest of it, except for the house, which was not too far from the street here, I'd say it's about 100 feet in. But these two old maiden ladies kind of let the thing grow up in the wilderness. I mean, they didn't really keep it up at all. So after the war, a fellow named Wolf bought the whole thing, and he put 52 houses up there. A great improvement as far as I'm concerned, because the place is pretty badly run down. Wolf himself is the third house down Minion right here. He took a double lot for himself and sold off and built all the rest of it. So that's one change. This house and the one next door were the first two houses in this end of Western Hill, on this side of the street. I guess the Dow's place was the third. Nothing else. There's nothing else around. All the other houses down here in the temple and everything were not here. My wife knows more about it because when she was, grade school, she went to Warren, they're phasing Warren out this year, so last year. She was the first president of the school back in 1929. The Warren School. And of course the old Pierce School that the kids went to was over in Chestnut, and then it was moved up here after the war. There's been, I think that a lot of the streets around here still have the same old houses they did before. On Berkeley Street, I think, in some of the other Prince Street certainly, and of course on the other side of Fuller Street, a lot of those houses are quite old too. I don't know whether they're as old as this, but they're quite old. But the neighborhood club, which is around the corner on Berkeley Street, is 100 years old, I think it had its 100th anniversary, 1876 to 1976, a few years back. Bill Tillman played here once on the courts. Matter of fact, I've had Bill on board for practice here a couple of years when he was along with a friend of mine. And the neighborhood club has stayed just about the same as it always was, with one major exception, and that is they finally relaxed the membership rules, and they did nothing but lost years and years and years until, I guess, either for financial pressure or whatever. And they used to be after us to join, and we just weren't interested until they relaxed the membership, which they have now done. There are any number of Catholics and Jews, and it's just a much better club than it used to be. And that was a major change for this was really a WASP area, the whole thing here. So you would gradually even now, because the last 20 years are much more comfortable and easy for everybody. West Newton itself, of course, has changed tremendously because of the pike. Everything was down there. If you go down here, well, you know where Second Church is at the bottom of Highland Street there? Well, just a few feet to the other side of the church was the old railroad station. And you had to go down a little separate road into the station. The roof of the station was about parallel to the grounds that are now outside the church. You can picture. I went to Boston Latin School back in those days in the late 20s, and I used to take the train to Huntington from there. I remember I paid $1.92 for 12 rides. And of course, the West Newton itself, the stores all changed hands many times. I don't know whether you care about what the stores were then, but where they have a CVS now in the corner, that used to be a night when I was really in a drugstore, McCarthy's drugstore, and of course there's no movie theater. If you came up Washington Street in this direction from Westwood Square, there was a big railroad bridge where the street crossed over the tracks there, and there was a big hardware store just to the shore of the bridge there, Collins's hardware store, which of course was taken out with the Viking. Other than that, just the stores I'm sure have changed hands a few times. There is a hardware store right there beside the theater now that was here in the 20s, Harris's hardware store. But I don't recall if there was any major changes, except what the Pike has done with the whole area, which we consider very good because it puts us 60 seconds off the entrance next to the Pike. Whereas if you live in Wellington, you have to come all the way through before you get on. But I wouldn't say there's been anything spectacular about Newton. I know that the reputation of the schools has boosted real estate values substantially, I would say. And West Newton Hill is supposed to be one of the prestige areas, I suppose. Talk about it. At least people seem to think there's a woman who lives next door as a real estate agent, and there are very few homes available on West Newton Hill. People like it, to stay. Until they get quite old, and we thought about moving once the kids grew up and moved out, but we decided we wanted to stay. Are you picking it up all right on there? Is that you jumping where the way it should?
Okay, fine.
So I don't know what else I can tell you. The house, big white house, which is 2 doors down, belonged at one point to the president of First National Bank, a guy named Charlie Spencer, and where this house next door is, they had formal gardens at one point in the 30s, 40s. Then the whole thing was sold, and the gardens were uprooted, and they put this house in between us and Spencer's. Nothing very, exciting. I think it probably evolved fairly slowly and comfortably. No major upsets, no major tornadoes that wiped out half the town or anything like that. One of the things that is nice about this particular area, or has been up to now, is that we have situated in Western Hill. We have Warren right here and Pierce right here, and then the high school. My wife used to walk to high school from here. It's a little walk, but all of it's very centrally located. And until the kids were 13, they really never had to cross the street to get to school. You know, my kids, anyway, they just had to see. I don't know whether that's the kind of thing you want.
No, that's fine.
But, I don't know. All down and back here, that's all new. It used to be just a straight drop right down to the Warren School grounds. But now they've got roads in there and a lot of houses. Where the fire station is down here, there used to be just a little variety store and restaurant. Some woman's name we call it. Of course, Norabega was the big thing way back. That was a very fancy place. I mean, before the totem pole or anything like that, it was a big zoo. They had elephants and tigers. The whole camp was really nice there. And they had cars that ran right down the middle of Commonwealth Avenue. That's where the reservation comes from, where the streetcars went. And in the summer, they'd have open cars, almost like California. San Francisco, just open cars, you just walk, you got any seat you wanted right off the street, and that was fun. That was what I take out riding in those open cars. That's why they have that reservation because of the traffic.
Well, you were mentioning all the shops over over there, and obviously there wasn't much around here to shop at, so we had to go do all your food shopping and stuff. And
yes, there was an A&P that's down there where the European Health Spa is now. I don't know whether you know what that is, that block. Up beside Tomlinson's, there was a store called Miano's, which was very what would you say, a fancier store, and they handle all S.S. Pierce products and all that kind of thing. And in those days, my mother-in-law used to order by phone, and just bring up the order. And so they traded quite a bit there. As I remember, we went to Star, even. The Star's in Newtonville now, and it used to be in Newtonville even before World War II. They have a little store on the other side of the street. Right now there's a Christian-Science reading room there or something. Or where that little dress fabric store is and so on. That was where Star Market started in the 30s, over there. And we used to go there, and when they built over the pike and so on, we were with them. So we did most of our shopping over there when we were first married. But there was another grocery store beside the movie theater. But it's not quite the same now. There's a little store there, a variety store, and there's one over next to CVS called 24, which I don't know much about. But you could get what you needed in West Newton, pretty much. As I say, the A&P was the big store. The gas stations were more or less as they are now. There's one at the bottom of Chestnut Street, one across the street, the Atlantic. We still own the Atlantic, right beside the GS paper company on the other side of the street. But, so as I say, 2 hardware stores, a couple of grocery stores. Movie theater, I think, came in after World War II. That was when I remember they took a vote of the residents of the town to see if there's going to be any big objection. It wasn't, so they built it. There were no banks on it, I recall. The churches, of course, have been here forever. Yeah. And we went to Second Church for a number of years after the war. And then well, there are 3 or 4, there's a Catholic church right down here at the foot of Prospect Street. That's been there forever. Then there was the Congregational Church that we went to, and the one on the other side, the, what the hell is that? What's that, Highland Street? It's still there, I can't remember. Well, anyway. Then, of course, there was a lot of changes in West Newton, I guess, or some on the other side of Washington Street, down on Walton Street. I went to Pheasant for 3 years in the 20s, and there used to be an Hickey golf course right there in the clubhouse on Walton Street. That's where the first hole was. And it went all the way across, what the hell's the big street that goes to Waltham from Newtonville? I can't remember. But anyway, they had 18 holes. I played it many times. And when I was at Pheasant, I played them. The 17th green was right there at the edge of the school grounds. But they still, I don't think they had any golf course there. They stripped it down to 9 and took everything on the other side of that big street and built on it. Then they encroached with more buildings on the side. So I'm not up on it now, but it was a nice 18-hole course back in the 20s, and perhaps in the mid-30s up that far.
That was Pheasant?
Pheasant,
yeah. I remember reading about that. What was it like? And supposedly it was like the private school around.
Oh, well, I mean, they had kids from all 48 states. This was I guess the prestige grammar school in the country. The enrollment's only 200. And I went there mainly because when we moved from Newton Center, and I had no ties with the public school up here, and here was Pheasant right here in the same town. So I went as a day student for the first year. And then in the last 2 years I lived there. It was awkward being a day student. There were only 6 or 8 of us, the rest of them, all living there. And so my father thought it would be a good idea if I lived there, which I agreed with. So I graduated from there in 29. The son of the founder just died last week. Art Pheasant, he was 86. I went to a dinner over at Pheasant a few months back. He seemed in good shape. What the hell, 85? Can't ever be sure. So that was really the end of the first group that ran the school. That Jay Pheasant started, and I remember Hart when he just got out of college and came in there. And, I don't think he's been running it actively. I think he lives on the Garlands, or did. But it was a good school. I mean, I started Latin in the 6th grade, and boy, I mean, they really put it to you. And I guess it's maintained its reputation as far as I know. And as I say, the kids came from all over the world. I don't know what the enrollment is now. Maybe you can check with somebody or check with them. Maybe more than 200.
Well, I just want to move a little bit. You keep referring to the war. I assume that's World War II.
Do what? Yes.
The war.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. How did that affect you personally?
Well, it left my wife and a couple of kids here without me for 2.5 years. Didn't affect me otherwise. I never was in combat. I was in the Signal Corps. It uprooted us for a while. When I first went in, my wife moved out to Northampton, where her sister was teaching drama at Smith. And Jean and her mother, who lived here, went out there for maybe 8 months or a year, full school year, I guess. And it wasn't a major disruption, except that I was away for 2.5 years. And we got out of it fairly good.
So you kind of use that as a marketing post in your life?
Well, I mean, in terms of what happened to the neighborhood after it, I mean, all of this was post-war,
Yeah.
and the Pike and all that. So before that, it was I guess a small village. But in terms of West Newton, I think that after the war, the extent that it has changed, it started to make these rules for the real estate and all this. I know this house was, up till the assessment was assessed $15,200 a month ago. You know, and I'm sure, like most old houses, we're the ones that have taken the rap a little bit on the taxes. But what the hell, we didn't pay him for years when we probably should have, and paid more. And the house went from 15 to 158, 156, something like that. And I think most old houses, some of the people live in the crunch because, but I think it's mainly because we got away with it for years and years and years. I mean, I have no argument with it. I mean, I'm not going to go down and beat on the doors down there. I mean, I figure I can get them 55 or whatever, but we're not going to sell it. But I think that is an unfair price, so we'll live with that. I don't think we make control, just to shave a few bucks or something. So the war made no real difference. When I came home, we had 2 more kids, and they've all grown up in middle schools. Now you know, they're often this woman that's with us now. My daughter's been a buyer at Macy's for a while, and she's coming back to us. She didn't like New York, she's been there a long time. And she's been talking to Queens and Jordan's. She gets something here. And another daughter's on Long Island, which isn't too far away. We can drive in 4.5 hours. She's vice president in charge of academic affairs at the college in Long Island. My son is a lawyer, lives in the 3rd floor here. And my daughter graduated from law school this year. Will be coming home at least until she takes the bar. So they're all coming home with them, which is fun. I mean, you know, thank God we got the room for it.
I want to move on just a little bit and go to your job. Who did you work for?
I worked for New England Merchants Bank in Boston for 20 years. I retired early when I was 60. I hadn't done it for 20 years. I was the first one, I think, in Boston to be hired into a bank as an advertising public relations. The advertising that was done at Boston banks was, you know, terrible. I mean, the bankers couldn't write ads to pay, and generally speaking, they didn't do much advertising. But I went down there because the guy who ran the bank was a tremendous fellow, he was tremendous because he let me do what I wanted to do, you know. And so I worked there for 20 years, and for 15 or so, I represented the bank on television, radio. I probably did on camera 450 commercials for the bank for a long period of time. And before that, I'd done radio. And in addition to doing the job, I did this extra. So that and that was something that seemed to go well because we had a slogan which I devised initially. We were a rather small bank compared to the first. And I designed a slogan which said, where the man you talk to is the bank. In the sense that you weren't coming to a bank for Marvel or all the permits, you were coming because of a guy, all right? And if the guy who served you was good, that's all you need. You didn't care where the hell they were or what else they did. So when we started radio and television, they said, well, look, we got Liz? So when we decided to get radio first and then television, with that slogan, I thought, well, hell, the advertising agency said, why don't you do it yourself? I can't do that. But I did. And so I did it for, as I say, about 15 years. And then the guy in the bank, his name was Dick Chapman, I felt that public service was very important to the bank. And he really gave me a tremendous amount of support, and we were doing things that no other bank in the country was doing. It's just the kind of stuff you want.
This is fine.
We used to run, when I first got down there, well, before I went there, Dick Chapman came to the advertising agency where I was, and he wanted to spend $10,000. He knew a year. He knew where there was. He knew a guy in the agency, so I was assigned to the account to do the copying. So yeah.
Do you know where I can get all his work number or his phone number?
Ollie's work number. One Boston banks, I say, were just really conservative, and so I got. I had a philosophy of advertising, particularly for banks, that I evolved. That you just couldn't get down in the arena with everybody else and claw everybody's back, saying the same goddamn thing everybody else was saying. It's just ridiculous. So what I did was the first vehicle that I constructed for the bank, and here again, the president was just marvelous. I said the first one I did was about 1960. Boston was teetering on the edge of going right down the drain. I mean, at that point, the Prudential Towers, the whole Prudential setup was a good indication of that, because they built the foundations, just cement foundation, and it stayed there for 3 years while they fought about taxes in the city. And it just filled with water and evaporated. I mean, a terrible thing in the Huntington Avenue Railroad yards. So Boston was in tough shape, and whether they would get out, we didn't know. So I suggested, which we did, that we commission the 2 co-directors of the Harvard-MIT Joint Center for Urban Studies to do a series of full-page ads for us on the problems of Boston. We called it Boston the Job Ahead. And we said we want no editorial control. You write us 2,500 words, and we will run them as full-page ads in the Boston papers. And we'll sign them. And we did, and we ran 12 of them. And it was very successful. And everybody thought we were great to do it. And Harvard University published a book of the ads. We had nothing to do with it. They said they thought it was good enough to be interesting to municipalities all over the country. So, and we talked about schools and law and order. Actually, one of them was called Law and Order. That was back a long time ago. Talked about the whole enterprise system, the traffic, the freight, all the problems, and so on. And so it tended to put us apart from everybody else. Then, on a totally different front, you think about banks, and you think, there's one place that bank publicity never hits us on its 4th pages. Okay? And so I had another idea, and I don't know, is your background in this area or not? Where do you come from?
Well, I come from the history department, but...
No, but I mean, where have you been living?
Oh, I come from Connecticut.
Oh, you do? Well, the Longwood Cricket Club over here in Chestnut Hill used to have the National Doubles Championships, tennis. And as the years went by, they were part of a league of Wimbledon and Longwood and Forest Hills then and so on, which said that if any player turned professional, they just ruled out entirely. He couldn't play. And that was simply because they couldn't control the pros. So that all the best players in the world, as they got to be the best players and turned pro, they couldn't come back to play Longwood, which I thought was insane. I mean, here's a beautiful club, along with the other clubs like Wimbledon and Forest Hills and so on, who wouldn't let the players play. So I went to Bud Collins, a guy whom I didn't know then. This was in '63. But I knew he was interested in tennis. He worked for the Herald at that time. No, it's the Globe. He worked for the Herald before that. He's working for the Globe. And I said, look, am I crazy? I would like to get the top officials in the world to come here and play along with me. Is there any reason that you can think of that hasn't been thought of? What? He said, no reason. So he belonged to Longwood. And so he got me together with the president of Longwood, who ultimately got together with the board of directors there. And they said, look, if you can get the guys to come, they can use our courts. Now, this was a landmark anywhere in the world. These guys were considered traitors, renegades, the worst of the worst, to want to play for money above the table instead of under. So anyway, So then I, having got Longwood's okay, I got in touch with Jack Kramer, whom I didn't know. And I outlined in a letter what I was talking about. Simply was, I'd like to get a dozen, maybe, of the best players in the world. And they were all pros. I mean, when the amateur got good enough, we turned pro. These were guys that you may not know, but they're guys in the pantheon of tennis, like Rosewell and Hoden, Gonzalez, and all those fellows. So I said, wrote to Jack, and I said, here's my idea. I would like to get all these guys together, and if they'll come along with, the bank will put a prize money of $10,000. You think back to that kind of money, and he said, he wrote me back and said, I'm going down to Australia to do the BBC broadcast of the Davis Cup around Christmas, and I will sound out the guys, they'll be there, and find out if they're interested. He came back, said they'd love it. They'll be there. So he and I got together. I stayed at his house for a week out there, just outside Los Angeles, and we, mostly him, built up 7 other cities behind. I mean, they were coming to try, and he had contacts. Of course, he'd been running these one-night stands all over the world. I mean, you know all about it. At this time, he wasn't involved with tennis, pro tennis, and so this troupe came over, and they played 8 tournaments, all $10,000 apiece, and they culminated here at Longwood. And Laker beat Gonzalez in the final, and he won $2,200, and that was big money. And the bank sponsored it. My God, you would have thought we'd changed the whole face of Boston. We got wood dance space in the sport pages, and it just tremendous publicity. And we did it from the time it was 10,000 until it was costing us about 200,000. And then the year after I left the bank, they dropped it. I think it wasn't the same management then, you see. I mean, and when new management comes in, they like to do their own thing, you know. And this was Dick Chapman's baby, it was my baby, and but in any event, and just for the hell of it, before you, well, I'll get it now. I'll show you the kind of publicity we got, which was for the bank. It was marvelous, because banks, I mean, you know what, man, they look at the comments, they look at the sport pages, then they may go somewhere else. We just smashed them on the sport pages, and the other banks was just sick that we got this thing going. And then again, a few years later, everybody was hollering about the problems of New England and Massachusetts, you know, and all the rest of Massachusetts, that we didn't have anything to offer. I mean, we were being poor now. So I said, look, why don't we run a series of full-page ads on what's right in New England? That's what we'll call it. What's right in New England? Now, this is big money. This is big, and they're spending in their own goddamn ads, you know. And they did 10 of them. And we got the best people we could find to write these. And we didn't, again, we exercised no editorial, because the minute you get into a red penciling, or having the president of the bank red pencil something because he disagreed, the point was, he's not the expert. Yeah. So then, fine, and another thing that Dick Chapman of the bank allowed me to do, when I went over, I was doing commercials over, cutting them over at Channel 4, I used to, because I'm very public service oriented anyway, I kept needling the brass of the station, do more public service. So they said, what the hell would you do? Well, I mean, you know, what would you do? So I had for some time, I used to have an occasional luncheon at the bank where I would invite people, it was like a little salon, outsiders, whom I didn't know. I just call them and ask them to come to lunch. Depending on what kind of a subject I was trying to build for the luncheon, you know. And I had Henry Albright, and I had governors and senators. They all came, you know, and this was something that the bank was delighted to have these people come to lunch. I mean, they weren't necessarily customers or anything like that. So then I thought, some of those lunches we held and we talked at lunch, and I said, my God, here we are, and the only people who are listening, just 8 people. It's ridiculous. So I suggested to the station that we set up an hour discussion program. They said, well, maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. I tell you what, we'll do one and see. So I take one, I moderated it before that. And they put it on Saturday after Memorial Day. It was the most gorgeous day of the year, you know. But they just wanted to see how it would work. So after we put it on, they said, we like it. If you want to do it, we'll make a deal with you. We'll give you, let's do it once a month. You pick any Wednesday afternoon that you want to tape. You produce the guys, the subject we don't care. You do whatever you want. We'll give you an hour of prime time, either Wednesday night, Thursday night, or Friday night. Take an hour, show up on network, or whatever, and you can have that time. And I did that for almost 3 years. And I can, if you're interested, I can show you some of the people. We had everything from international affairs to baseball, and I had Roger Sponzi, and I've had 3 presidential advisors, like Walt Rostow was on a program, Brzezinski I had on twice, Kissinger I had on different shows. And I enjoyed it, and the bank didn't sponsor it or anything. They just let me do it. And of course, what did everybody think? Jesus, your bank is terrific to do that. Because I was on television for the banks. I thought the bank did the program. They didn't.
What was the name of that program?
It's called Thinking Out Loud. And I can even show you a lineup of what we had. So, again, being allowed to do that gave the bank additional stature, and Chapman was willing to trust me, you know, to talk to a quarter million people and not put my foot in their mouth and, you know, ruin the bank's image or anything. And so that was another thing. So I tell you, as we went along, our bank was doing lots of things that nobody else was doing. And as a result, we took a survey, it's now some years ago, run by the Motivational Research, Ernest Fitcher's out in New York, a local branch here. They did a survey of 500 company presidents and comptrollers inside 148. That was our market. It wasn't retail so much. But took a survey as to what our standing was to the other banks. We limited on every goddamn thing. If you're interested, I can show you some of the material. I don't know whether you want it or not.
Yeah, you can show me a little later.
Yeah,
Kind of
well,
hard
okay.
to see this stuff on the
right,
tape.
okay, sure.
But I am definitely interested myself in that. It sounds great. That obviously wasn't your first job then.
No,
Where'd you work at before that?
My first real job was for Lever Brothers. Okay, they were in Cambridge. They moved to New York later, and that was another thing I did. I don't know why. Sometimes I was just doing things that nobody else either was interested in doing or did or whatever. But Lever Brothers, I was there when I had to leave for the Army, and I came back there after the war. And in 1946, they got a new president named Chuck Leffman. He was on the cover of Time. Jeff McCall wondered what they called him. And he was there about 3 years, in which time I, and I'm sure others, saw that he was driving the Lever Brothers into the ground. He was investing the whole time in it. And nobody was saying anything. And I was just a lowly kid who was, I did market research. I saw all of the figures of all the sales of the soaps and all that. I saw what was happening to them. And I began to collect this stuff only because it just seems so ridiculous. The guy was getting $200,000 or $300,000 a year, which in those days was big money, and he was making a follow for the company. So in '49, he decided to move to New York, move the company to New York. There were 800 people in the executive office building in Cambridge. It's now the Sloan School. You know, the Sloan building. It's called. It's a big building right on the Memorial Drive there. The Tech Factory. Tech took it over, and the Tech Factory dining rooms on top floor and so on. Well, that's where I worked. And so they moved to New York, and when they did, they only asked about 50 of the 800 people to go to New York. It was a real tough time, and the rest of us were fine. And so while I was looking for a job, I had all this material about what Luckman had done with the company. So it was just raw material. So I went to a guy I hadn't met before. His name was Charlie Morton, who was the editor of the Atlantic. And I kind of orally outlined what Luckman had done with the company. And he said, write it up. I want to see it in 2 weeks. So, under that kind of interest, I wrote it. I called it Alger Horatio, or A Business Career in Reverse. Luckman came to Lever Brothers out of Pepsodent with a tremendous reputation for having done an awful lot of Pepsodent to lift them out of the ruck and make them very, very successful. It turned out it really wasn't. He sensed early in his career what public relations would do. And his people, well, I'm a little ahead of the story. So anyway, I wrote it, and Morton read it, and he says it's absolutely unpublishable. You can't put this stuff without being sued and made a breakfast. He said, I wish we could use it, we can. So I had it written then. So I sent it to Life. In those days, Life magazine had a big feature in the back of every issue, a big story, whatever. And I got a letter back from Life saying, we can't use it, but Fortune is very interested. So we can down to New York and talk to Fortune. Well, to make a long story short, I did. They published it. And they just called it the case of Charles Luckman. What they did was, they had a battery of lawyers for it. They had one of their editors and a research assistant come up here to Boston and spent 3 weeks checking my facts and figures with a list of 30 people I gave them. Some of them didn't want their names involved, but they were glad to, they were verified what I had. And so that was another thing. I mean, I don't know. My life has been a series of, things like that. They're not tremendously earth-shaking, but they've been fun. The television, the tennis, all of that stuff, which is outside the beaten track of running a goddamn bank ass, which is not terribly exhilarating. But I had enough going for me in other ways, and I was very involved with things in Newton. I was president of the Civic Association, president of the PTA and council, all that stuff all the way through the 50s and early 60s. So I built into Newton, and I built into the banking community as far as my area. I was not a guy to make loans like that, But what I did. So after I'd done it for 20 years, the bank manager changed. I just said, hell with this. So I resigned early and went in consulting business for advertising corporations. I'm doing some now, not a hell of a lot, but just enough to keep me interested. So that's where I came from. Was having gone to work for Lever Brothers, and from Lever Brothers, when I did get fired, I worked for an advertising agency for 5 years. And when I did that, in the middle of that was when the Merchants Bank came to the agency and wanted to spend $10,000. And after that year, the first year in 53 it was, in 54, we spent $35,000. In 55 they spent, the budget was for $67,000. And so Chapman called me the other day and said, look, I don't know how big this thing will get, but would you be willing to come down to the bank and just do that and never mind anything else? So we talked and negotiated, and so I came down with that. He said, sometime we might even spend $150,000. What I left was over $1 million, well over $1 million. Because but I was really very lucky, because most bankers wouldn't have given me the time of day in the various things I wanted to. I was a liberal Democrat. I was a member of ADA and all that stuff. And this was something that Chapman tolerated. I don't think the other banks would have even tolerated it. But I told him when I went there, I ain't changing for nothing. You want me as I am, and I'll do my job. That's fine. But I'm my own guy. And I'm not gonna. You don't like. So we used to kid about it, and he'd give me a hard time. And one time I was I was asked to be MC at a big Democratic fundraising dinner at Sheridan. It wasn't a Sheridan, I don't know what it's called. A couple of times. And at that time, I felt that the only reason they were asking me to do it, really, although I was involved in Newton County, was because I was a big deal on television. Okay? So I figured my image on television belonged to them. You know, it didn't belong to me, really. So I went to Jim, and he said, look, I prefer you can do it. I don't find you getting involved and being at that table. I prefer you. So I said, okay. I mean, because I knew that's what they wanted. I mean, it wasn't for me necessarily, but I had a lot of recognition and in a very favorable sense. So anyway, I didn't do it. So, but I was listed in the papers the next day as being at that table. So we have a morning meeting of all the offices. We did have, it's too big now, all the offices of Bank and Chapman. We went through the days, happenings before, and then he said, I saw in the paper this morning that our bank's interest is being protected by that idea in this big Democratic dinner. He said, I just want you to know that when the revolution comes, your head's going to roll with the rest of us. And I said, Rick, I wouldn't have it any other way. And he said, neither would I. You know, we had a good relationship. He knew what I was. I mean, I never fooled anybody. I worked very hard for Democratic. Some of them I shouldn't have followed. But he was very tolerant and very supportive of the things I wanted to do, which made it fun. And when it wasn't fun, I quit. I was there 21 years, and I figured I'd done everything I could for them, really. And so that was where I spent a major part of my history.
You just basically mentioned that you were kind of involved in politics in Newton.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah, mostly schools.
Mostly schools.
Yeah. I ran campaigns for a number of people in the school committee. As a matter of fact, Superintendent Schools out of Iron Fink is a very close friend of mine. His wife was. I ran her 3 campaigns. She was on school committee. Dick Douglas, who was on the school committee, ran his campaign. He's now living in Wellesley. But I wrote a report on the Newton school system that just back in 1957. There was a guy doing a doctoral study on teacher workloads and that kind of thing in Newton. And so he got a whole committee of us together to research various aspects of the teacher workload. And I don't know, 50 or 100 other people, I don't know. Anyway, when we compiled all the stuff, it was about May or June, and he asked me, the guy who's got the study, he asked me if I'd write the report, at least on what we found. So I spent my whole month's vacation writing. It's called Teacher Utilization Study. And it won a national award, which, you know, I didn't write it for that, but the school submitted it somewhere, and I got a national award for writing the thing, although, I mean, a lot of people doing research. So I've been, as I say, I've been involved in education mainly. Newton Civic Association, I was president of that. That was just after the war. The Newton Citizens for Education, helped found that, and I was the first president of that. And I've got a list of things. I wrote when I quit going to business myself, I had to write, sort of a resume, a brochure. 57 goddamn things. I was amazed myself to see how deeply I'd become involved. But hell, I've lived here forever, and so it's bound to do a lot of stuff. But I was very much what you want to call an activist, and less so now. But I figure there are a lot of young people who really coming up. I mean, they're taking over the school problems and everything that I used to deal with. And I don't do much politics now. I work with the Barney Grant. Trying to raise money for him. I go down there and go southwest to my spare time. His office is right here in this one. I'm very, very fond of Barney, and I think he's fantastic. So I'm keeping my hand in just a couple of things. I'm on the committee for Aaron. They're going to give Aaron a big party because he's quitting school have his people go over there and take canvas all through the thing, give us color prints to them, so the whole shop. And they would put them in an album. So it's just, it's been not an earth-shaking life here, but enough so that I've carved out my own pictures and had fun doing it. More than I want. A lot of good friends. Don't see, that much of, but they're around. I mean, we're into the community enough so we don't feel we have to do anything. We don't have to make that difference here. We're all farts now, just hanging around here and stuff. It's been good with each other. And Jean came from a family of 5 girls, 2 of whom won the senior company in high school. Jean ran the Newton High. They were very active in sports. One of them died young, 19, but the rest of them all went to master. Did very well. One of them, the oldest girl, was married to a fellow you probably heard of, Craig Neighbors, who was chief of staff at the Army. He died of cancer 5-6 years ago. He was in charge of Vietnam over there after this war. God, he was actually He said he wouldn't have me in his outfit if I were the last. So anyway.
Thanks a lot. That's